Australia declared war on birds. Not metaphorically, not as a joke. The Australian government literally mobilized soldiers, deployed heavy machine guns, and launched a full-scale military operation against a flock of emus, and they lost. Badly. So badly, in fact, that the whole thing had to be quietly swept under the rug before anyone outside the country found out. But here's what nobody tells you. This wasn't just some bizarre one-off. What happened in the Western Australian outback in 1932 changed the way governments around the world think about wildlife. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how the most powerful military in the Southern Hemisphere got humiliated by a bird that can't even fly. And trust me, the story is even weirder than you think. Welcome to Only in Australia. Let's go back. It's 1932. Australia is in rough shape. The Great Depression is hammering the economy. In Western Australia, specifically the Campion district, thousands of ex-soldiers from World War I have been given land grants to farm wheat. These were veterans. Men who had survived Gallipoli, the Western Front, and the trenches. The government promised them stability, and for a few years things were going okay. Not great, but okay. Then the emus showed up. Now, emus are always around. But in 1932, something different happened. Around 20,000 emus migrated into the district. 20,000. That is not a flock. That is an invasion. And these emus were not polite about it. They tore through fences. They trampled wheat fields. They ate crops that these struggling veterans had worked months to grow. The farmers were desperate. And they did what any desperate person does. They called the government. Major GPW Meredith was given command. He had 2 soldiers, 2 machine guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The plan was simple. They'd round up the emus, herd them into a kill zone, and mow them down. It was going to be quick, clean, and decisive. It was none of those things. On November 2nd, the operation began. The soldiers located a group of about 50 emus near a dam. They set up the guns and opened fire. And this is the part where you need to really picture what happened next. The emus scattered, not in panic, not randomly. They just split into small groups and disappeared into the scrub. 50 targets became dozens of tiny moving problems heading in different directions. The guns jammed. The terrain was too rough. By the end of that first engagement, they had killed maybe a dozen emus, out of 50, with machine guns. The next few days were more of the same. The soldiers chased emus across the bush. The emus refused to cooperate. They moved too fast, they spread out too wide, and they had this deeply unsettling habit of just not dying when you shot them. Major Meredith himself would later report that the emus seemed to be able to absorb multiple bullets and keep running. He compared them to Zulus, which tells you a lot about the military mindset of 1932 and the birds' resilience. They brought in an ornithologist who described the emus as operating almost like guerrilla fighters. When the soldiers charged, the emus split. When the soldiers retreated, the emus reformed. There was no central point to attack. You couldn't demoralize them. You couldn't flank them. Their supply lines were the entire Australian landscape. After about a week of almost no results, the operation was suspended. The official reason was the rain, but members of Parliament had started asking questions. A politician named Sir George Pearce was being mocked openly in the press. The local newspaper had started calling him the Minister for the Emu War. The numbers were becoming undeniable. After 6 days, the soldiers had fired 2,500 rounds and killed approximately 50 emus. That's about 50 bullets per bird. In World War I, the average bullets per kill was 7,000. So the emus were more efficient to kill than human soldiers. The operation was halted on November 8th. The army withdrew. Meredith filed an official report of defeat. He noted that the emus had demonstrated a remarkable capacity to absorb punishment without any signs of distress, but the farmers were still being destroyed. The emus didn't stop just because the army left. The men were now financially ruined. So in December 1932, Major Meredith came back. Round 2. This time they mounted the guns on trucks for mobility. It worked slightly better. They killed more emus per round fired, but the landscape was still impossible. The trucks couldn't navigate the terrain at speed. The emus still scattered. The ratio improved, but only slightly. Round 2 officially ended in February 1933. The army withdrew for the final time. The tally was between 900 and 2,500 emus killed. Estimates of total emus still ran into the tens of thousands. The operation was declared over. It was not a success. The Emu War became a source of national embarrassment. For decades, most Australians didn't even know it had occurred, and yet, the emus won in a way that was deeper than just surviving the guns. It forced a real reckoning with the land. The government refused further military assistance. Instead, they began building and funding proper emu-proof fencing. Long stretches of fence across Western Australia redirected the annual migrations away from farmland. It wasn't a dramatic victory for human ingenuity. It was a slow, grudging acknowledgement of nature. The emus had effectively forced an infrastructure solution that should have been the first response all along. There's a quote from the ornithologist. "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world." The emu is one of the most physically resilient animals on the planet. Their feathers are dense enough to deflect glancing shots. Their vital organs are positioned to make central mass hits less immediately fatal. They can run at 50 kilometers an hour. They have a two-chambered heart that keeps pumping even under trauma. They were outmaneuvered by 90 million years of natural selection. Now zoom out. The Emu War wasn't just a weird one-time thing. It was part of a violent process of figuring out the land. Australia in the 1930s was trying to make a European-style civilization work in a landscape that was never designed for it. The Campion district is semi-arid. It's emu country. The farmers were trying to grow wheat in a place that had other ideas. The government's instinct was to fight, to shoot, to trap, to poison. And it mostly didn't work. Not permanently. Because you can't solve an ecological problem with bullets. The land doesn't negotiate. The emu fencing is still there, a monument to the slow lesson that took a full military defeat to begin learning. And the emus? Still there. Still migrating. Still massive. Australia has this recurring dynamic, people trying to impose order, and the landscape pushing back, every time. The cane toad introductions, the rabbit plague, the bushfires. Running into the reality that this continent operates on its own logic. The only thing that ever works is learning to work with those systems, instead of against them. The farmers who survived eventually adapted. They built better fences. They stopped expecting the landscape to conform to them. It took the humiliation of losing a war to birds. There is genuinely no other country on Earth where a story like this is possible. It's brutal, ongoing, and sometimes funny. It's a negotiation between humans and a landscape that refuses to be tamed. That's Australia. And the Emu War is one of the most Australian things ever. Drop a comment below with the one fact that surprised you. I read every single one. Thank you for watching. If you want to go deeper into the chaotic history of how Australia came to be, the next video is waiting for you. Every word is real.